Okay, from that Leviathan trailer, the Neurotyrant looks pretty awesome. Floating on in, crackling with psionic energy and warp skullduggery, and then melting the librarian's brain Darth Vader style.
Last night, Darth Vader came down from planet Vulcan and told me that if I didn't take Lorraine out, that he'd melt my brain. Yeah.
Which, to be honest, looked a lot better than the last time I saw a brain attacking someone back in 1988.
Fine with me, but wait till I tell people what's really going on around here. Now take that thing and bury it where it belongs!
So rather than buy the big box set, plus I'm not really a fan of the new Screamer Killer, I just looked on eBay for someone selling the individual model and found one for a great price. Trouble is, it didn't come with any assembly instructions, drag. But interwebs to the rescue, and I found the relevant instruction sheet on Reddit. Right. Grabbing the wire cutters, I snipped all the parts from the sprues, and then grabbing the X-Acto knife, chopped off the nubs and lumps and held it at a 90-degree angle or so to the plastic to scrape along and remove those occasional mould lines. Now, for assembling this thing, well, it's supposed to snap together and just hold, but as with any first run at new tech, I just don't trust it totally, and I'm going to add some little dabs of glue just to be sure it stays together. Once everything is together, onto the bases go the Tyrant and its two little floating neuraloids that help extend synapse. It all comes together very well and quite easily, no big surprises, but on the rear where the chitin armour plates meet, there are some decent sized gaps. So, breaking out the Mr. Dissolved putty and an old brush, I painted the putty into the gaps and filled them in and left it to dry for a bit. Right, off to the hiking boot box for a blast of Chaos Black primer from all directions. Once dry, a layer of Macragge blue on all the areas of skin, on the tentacles and the rest of the creature, and on those neuraloids. Then some Zerus purple. This gets applied to all the areas of armoured chitin, the claws and the big halo thing that surrounds the brain and offers so little protection that I assume it must be some sort of focus thing, a psychic coil or amplification. The same goes on the neuraloid's chitin brain defences. Right, white scar, painted on all the areas that will be glowing, pulsating brain, and on the additional little brains on its back and of course on the pet brains. Now, good old Nuln oil spread around on everything except on the white, letting it settle into all the grooves and troughs, giving me nice shadows. Leave it to dry totally, and then on to dry brushing. Dip into some Imric blue dry and then paint it onto the tentacles, and as the brush sheds the paint and when there's only a little left, perfect dry brushing state to dance the brush over the Macragge blue to highlight and accent. Then dip in again, paint another tentacle and keep going until all the tentacles have a gentle gradient onto the Macragge blue and the rest of the beastie's anatomy has been highlighted. Then Ethereum blue dry, same tactic just applied more delicately. Paint the tentacle tips and then work it up until the brush is almost paint free, and then swipe it across the rest of the model to highlight. This ends up with nice pale tips that merge into the Imric and then into the Macragge blue. Genestealer purple, and because there's no tentacles or any areas needing a solid colour, I wipe the brush on the back of my thumb to get it ready and then dry brush the chitin armour to bring out the edges and the ridges on the Tyrant and on the neuraloids. A little more white scar to cover your stray touches from the dry brush on the brain, and when dry, nihilic oxide spread all over the brain matter so that it settles in the grooves, getting a deeper hue. Actually, what are these wrinkles actually called? Okay, they're paint settled in the sulci, Latin for furrow, and leaves the gyri looking lighter to get a glowing effect that I accent with a very light dry brush of the white scar. And then the same on the neuraloids, nihilic on the brain, let it dry, and a light dry brush of white scar on the main dome of the brain. Right, the pipe thing this thing is attached to. Unlike the Norn Emissary, I can't just not use it because the tendrils actually wrap around it. The pipe is still black from the Chaos Black primer, so a light dry brush of Iron Hand steel is all that's needed to get a nice grotty industrial look. Then some Elmer's glue wiped around the rest of the exposed base and a sprinkle of small weld slate and stone to get a nice gravelly rocky environment, and then a blast of varnish to lock everything in. So here we have a Neurotyrant, a recent and horrific addition to the myriad bioforms of the Tyranid hive fleets. A development of the Neurothrope bio template, it too has an atrophied physical body with a vast floating cranium, throbbing with massive psychic power that carries it aloft and creates a powerful defensive shell that hardens it against even the most devastating of weapons. As a synapse beast, it can operate independently with ease and is accompanied by a pair of neuraloids, small Tyranid organisms that become charged with the iron will of the hive, and when the Neurotyrant directs these nodes to accompany a Tyranid force, the organisms of that force are compelled and reinforced by the synaptic link, even when they stray far from the leader beasts of the swarm. But the Neurotyrant also often leads Neurogaunts, Tyrant Guard or Zoanthropes, whereupon it radiates a ghastly invigorating influence that makes Tyranid creatures under its care far more deadly in combat, heightening their senses in savagery, compelling them to lethal ferocity. Also, when the shadow in the warp pours across the battlefield, Neurotyrants help focus the alien dread of the hive mind, making the foe more susceptible to its ravages. It defends itself in combat with ranks of razor-edged claws and its long agile tendrils that can lash out and kill with alacrity. But its true lethality comes from its psychic scream, a punishing blast wave of energy that rolls outward to literally liquefy the brains of those it targets, providing more raw material to be absorbed and reworked to serve the eternal hunger of the Tyranids.